Unblinkable Eyes, a Four-Smile sequel, Chapter 5. Scarlett's point of view. I snuck through the asylum quietly, making my way to Jeff's cell. Slendy had given me a dagger. Of course I wasn't going to use it. I wouldn't kill anyone, even if I hated them as much as possible. I heard quiet chatting and kept to the shadows. I saw a man with brown hair talking to a woman with blonde hair with glasses, the owner of the asylum, probably. I bit my lip and saw Arwen behind them, pointing to the man's belt and then to the cell. She mouthed, "Get the keys, then unlock the cell." I nodded and kept round the corner as Arwen walked up to them. I asked to talk to the woman. The woman agreed to talk and they walked off. I steadied my breathing and walked up to the guy. "Hello," I said. He stared at me. "I'm sorry, miss. This asylum isn't safe or open to the public. It isn't a museum," he said. "Shame," I said. I stabbed him. I grabbed the keys and opened Jeff's cell. "Ugh, what do you want?" Jeff said, looking down. I smirked and unlocked the chains he was bound up in and undid his straitjacket. "Hi, Jeff," I said. He looked up at me and saw me. Scarlett, how are you alive? Oh my gosh," he yelled, hugging me. I was surprised because I'd never seen Jeff so happy. "Slendy took me from the hospital and did something that made my heart work again," I said. Jeff smiled. "I'm glad you're all right," he whispered. I nodded and held his hand, pulling him out of the cell. "Scarlett, run! She called the cops," Arwen screamed, running towards us. "Who the heck is that? And what does she mean, who called the cops?" Jeff asked. "We have to go," I yelled, running out of the asylum with Jeff, Arwen running behind us. "Crap, sirens," Jeff said. "Oh, you idiotic children," Slendy said, and he picked all three of us by his tentacles, then teleported to his house. The house I nearly died in. "Is everyone here? Ben, Jack, Masky, everyone?" I asked. Slendy nodded and ran inside, finding Ben and jumping on his back. "Ben!" I yelled. He gasped. "Scar?" he muttered, putting me down and turning to face me. I smiled and he hugged me. He smelled funny. "Ben, are you still smoking?" I asked. He smirked and nodded. "You know it," he said, Arwen's point of view. I stood outside awkwardly while everyone walked in. Then the man that we got out of the asylum walked out and walked over to me. "Hey, I'm Jeff. And you?" he said. "I'm Arwen Elrond," I mumbled, looking around. I had to admit he was pretty cute. I didn't hear you," he said. "I'm Arwen Elrond," I said. "I'm Jeffrey Woods, but you can call me Jeff," he said. "This may sound stupid, but can I touch your face?" I asked, blushing. He chuckled. "Yeah." I bit my lip and touched his cheek. It was leathery. I pulled my hand and smiled. "You're cute," I whispered. "Thank you." My mom didn't agree. I sorted that out, though. He grinned. "You killed her?" I frowned. He smiled and nodded. "So, Arwen, how old are you?" he asked. 15, but don't try anything. "Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. That's Ben's job." He smirked, grabbing my hand and pulling me into his house. A blond boy walked up to me and smirked. "Hey, I'm Ben," he said. I rolled my eyes. "Don't even try it on with me," I said. He shrugged and walked away. Jeff walked up behind me and whispered, "Welcome to my family." Unblinkable Eyes, a Four-Smile sequel, Chapter 6. Arwen's point of view. I sat on the couch in the living room, nibbling my nails. Scarlett was all over Jeff. It was understandable that she hadn't seen him in a while, but I wanted to get to know him. Yet it was impossible with Scarlett was stuck to him like gum. I stood up and walked outside. I was walking over the grass when I tripped over someone and fell on the ground. The person stood up. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see you," I said. I heard a feminine laughter and was pulled to my feet. "It's fine," said a girl. She looked similar to Jeff. "What's your name?" she asked. "I'm Arwen." "Cute name. I'm Miss Massacre, but you can call me Meredith," she said. I smiled and nodded. "You look a lot like Jeff," I smiled. She laughed and nodded. "He's my inspiration," she said. "So you're together?" "No, he's my best friend," she smiled. "You guys would make a good couple," I said. She laughed. "You're cute, and I'll admit, Jeff and I are very much alike, but I'd never date him. It would ruin the friendship that we had," she explained. I laughed quietly and nodded. "It's getting dark. We have to go inside," I said. You can go in. I'm fine out here, she grinned. I nodded and walked inside to find Jeff and Scarlett sitting on the couch. I frowned and walked to the kitchen, looking for the tall man, Slendy. I think he was called. I found him looming over the stove, cooking spaghetti. Hello, Mr. Slendy. I blushed. He looked up at me, chuckling. Just call me Slendy, he said. I nodded, and he poured some spaghetti into a bowl and gave it to me. I smiled as he gave me a fork, and I started eating. I smiled at him when I finished. Thank you, Slendy, I said. He nodded and walked back into the living room. Jeff wasn't there, but Scarlett was hanging out with the blonde guy. I frowned and walked outside, seeing Jeff and Meredith talking. I walked out to them. Hey there, Meredith grinned. Hey, Jeff smiled. Hey guys, Jeff, did you know Scarlett is kissing with that blonde dude? I said. Jeff looked at me. Are you lying? He growled. I shook my head quickly and walked inside. Then he came out holding up his knife. She's on the couch by herself watching TV. You're lying, he yelled and threw the knife at me. I screamed, but Meredith let the knife go through her hand. I looked up at her. Thank you, I whispered. She nodded and walked up to Jeff. Listen, I love you, man, but Ben could have left before you walked in. You just can't assume she's lying, Meredith shouted. Jeff looked up at her and nodded, then walked up to me. I'm sorry, Arwen. Unblinkable Eyes, a Forced Smile sequel, Chapter 7. Arwen's point of view. It's all right, I smiled. He grinned and walked back inside, leaving me and Meredith alone. She walked over to me. Do you like it here? She asked. Well, I've only been here for 2.5 hours, I said. She laughed. Understandable. I haven't been here long either. Can you tell me what happened to you? I asked. She smiled and nodded. She told me what happened, and I bit my lip. I'm sorry, I whispered. About what? She asked, twirling my hair in her fingers. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. She smiled. It's all right, it happened. You couldn't have stopped it, even if you wanted to, she whispered. I blushed and started walking towards the house. She grabbed my hand and pulled me towards her. Don't leave, she mumbled. But it's cold, I shivered. She chuckled and hugged me. You know when someone hugs you and you try to pull away, but they won't let go? That's how I felt. I tried to pull away, but she giggled and kept hugging me. Meredith, let go, I whispered. She let go and stepped back. Thanks, I whispered. She nodded, walked inside, and shut the door, leaving me outside alone. I became aware of someone behind me. I turned around and was punched in the face. I fell to the ground and saw Scarlett's black hair and pale face standing over me, holding a knife. She kneeled down on my stomach, and I groaned in pain. You told Jeff about me and Ben, didn't you? Stupid little girl, she whispered. I shook my head, and she pointed the knife to my cheek and pressed in. I screamed in pain but covered my mouth. Tears ran down my face, and I began to feel sleepy. Then I passed out. Unblinkable Eyes, A Forced Smile, Chapter 8. Meredith's point of view. I liked her. She had really pretty, gorgeous pink hair, her dark brown eyes, her pale skin. Everything was nice about her. She thought I loved Jeff. Of course I did, but not in that way. When I hugged her, she didn't like it. It was obvious. I walked towards the door to say sorry for making her feel awkward. I opened the door and saw Scarlett on top of Arwen, cutting her face. I tackled Scarlett and put my pocket knife into her throat. I laughed as I did it and saw Arwen watching in shock. I stopped and crawled over to her, wiping the blood off her cheek. Tears ran down her face. Shh, it's all right, I whispered. She sniffed and hugged me again. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I wiped her tears. I hugged her again. She pulled away and blushed. Sorry, she muttered. I smiled and stood up, carrying her. She was like an elf compared to my height. I took her inside and sat her on the couch. Then Jeff walked up to me. Hey, where's Scarlett? I froze. She's, went for a walk. You're lying, he growled. You can't just do that. You can't just assume that I'm lying, I sighed. He growled and grabbed me, pushing me to the ground and punching me in the face. It carried on for about 2 minutes till Slendy pulled him off. Jeff, what the heck? Slendy yelled. Jeff screamed with frustration and walked outside. No, Jeff, don't go outside, I yelled. But he'd seen Scarlett's dead body on the ground.